I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is
On this
that
sad
is a
clown.
sad clown.
Proud of my address.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha packs, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom.
I'm excited for this guy. We've got another Redwood, which you may be surprised. We, not intentionally, but we didn't get this Redwood at the beginning of the podcast. So excited to circle back and talk to this guy today. I know I've had a lot of good conversations with this man, and I'm just inspired by the way he leads his family and in the community. And so we've got Specimen on the cast today. Specimen, it's good to see you. Where we like to kind of start off is just with that first workout. Who EH'd you? Where'd you get the name Specimen?
Yeah, good to see you, Plague. Thanks for having me on. It's been cool to hear some of the other guys come through, and cool to see what you and Pony are doing. So thanks for that. And as far as my story goes, my wife was actually the one that EH'd me. I've heard from several of the other guys that, the wife can be the one to EH. It's, I guess, not too rare, but still, somewhat rare. So being a Redwood, my wife worked at Nebraska Medicine, as you know. And so she admired wait time and thought it was a really cool thing. She respected him for just his work success and the way he led in his role at Nebraska Medicine. And so when he brought it up to her, she just thought, wow, this would be something that would be perfect for me to join and check out. So I went to a few of the happy hours that they had before the launch. Started that day, and what was it, April of 2018?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So April of 2018 kicked it off, and I guess that's how I was EH'd. What was the other part of your question there?
Curious your thoughts. That first workout, was it awkward? I mean, a few guys have kind of told us like they weren't really sure what what was going on, and then how'd they come up with the name Specimen?
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit awkward, anytime and I don't know that we did monkey humpers that first day, but anytime you're getting together with a group of men and doing a workout together, it's kind of like the first day was like, what are we doing? And it was well led. I think they brought in, I forget his name, but somebody from North Carolina came back. Sack, was that who it was? Anyway, he came back, and so it was awkward and fun at the same time. And I was fully committed, and just the militaristic style of the beatdown was something that I thought was really cool. And so I was never part of the military, but I like the discipline aspect of that, and kind of the teamwork aspect that you're all going through it together. So I thought it was cool, although looking back, it was awkward and, nobody knew what was going on. So it was a lot of fun. The way I got the name Specimen, at that time I sold laboratory products. Mm-hmm. So Specimen was what was thrown out, and I was really happy and grateful for that name, because you hear some of the other names and it's like, oh man, I wouldn't want that. So what's funny is about 2 weeks after starting in F3, I decided to leave that company, and I told Wait Time, I said, hey, it's cool if I keep that name, right? And he said, oh yeah, you're stuck with it. So whether you like it or not, you're sticking with that. So that's how I got the name Specimen. And actually just the other day I was at a workout and somebody was like, why Specimen? And it's funny because well, that's an offensive question. I mean, look at me. I mean, yeah. Why wouldn't they call me Specimen? No, but it's all tied back to laboratory products. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. And if I remember right, so you did you EH Reba? Did you get him involved, or because you knew a couple of the other Redwoods, right?
Yeah, so a couple of the other Redwoods, Reba was one of them. I worked with Reba, and then I don't know if Coach K was there that day. Coach K is somebody that's been posting a lot more frequently now in Gretna, in that area. And then there was a guy, Blackboard, a teacher, that came out. So I gathered, I was trying to promote and, get some of my closest contacts that I thought it would be a good fit for, committed. And it's been cool to see some of those guys that I've EH'd through the past have done remarkable things with the group. Superfly is one of them. He was a neighbor. And then Ponzi, of course, and somebody that I EH'd. And it's just been fun to see what he was able to do with the group. So yeah, it's been fun to see how the group has grown since that first day. That first day, I don't know if there were 15 to 20 guys there, and then now to see all these different AOs pop up, and that's kind of a normal number for most days of the week for some of these AOs. So
yeah. So we have you to thank for Ponzi. That
well, yeah, I guess I shouldn't have brought that up. Sorry.
No, I think yeah, it's fun. I've been trying to convince him to go to other regions as he's traveling around and do this like perpetual FNG thing, but he's not doing it. Well, so I think that's cool because you would have had some of the first like EHs, right? I mean, like getting somebody to show up to the first workout, right? That counts. What was your kind of fitness routine, or what were you doing before F3 for fitness? Or I guess what do you think kind of drew you to the group? Because you mentioned you were all in from the start.
I was all in just because I wasn't really a member of a gym. I had done some basketball leagues and things like that in the past that were helpful to have like a regular committed workout time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just never been good about commitment to a plan unless I have like a race scheduled, like I did a half marathon. And once I have something on the calendar, I get a little more committed. But as far as like, I've never really been like a big lifting guy, and running's always been kind of where I'm naturally suited to. I just feel like my body type and where I'm at, it's easier for me to run. So I've always done that. So I never really had much. So that's why I was really thrilled when Heidi said, hey, it's free.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that you don't have to know how to do these types of workouts, and that's really what's cool about F3 is no prior knowledge is required, no special equipment is required. Because I've done like the beach body and P90X and all that stuff. And some of those, it's like, well, you have to have these sets of equipment. And if you don't have this, you've got to go get it. So that's kind of where I was at in fitness. And early on, I left the company and I had a 3-month severance. So right when F3 started, I was just like at all the workouts and I had a great time. Then I started a new job where I'm fully commissioned. And if I don't get an order, I don't get paid. I'm on the road a lot. So between that and having kids, I've got 4 little ones at home. So it's kind of this, what do you have time for? And what's most important, kind of going back to that concentrica like model, what is at the center. And unfortunately for me, F3 has been the thing that I haven't been as devoted to. But since you asked me to join the podcast, it was something that it was a good reminder for me. And I even had one of the packs pocket dial me, and it was for nothing other than a mistaken call, and that actually motivated me to get out in the last week too. So for those packs that are out there, and if you're going to pocket dial anybody, maybe just pocket dial one of the other pack members, and that might be motivation to get them to a beat down.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I think some guys have come in, they've gotten involved, and then they life happens, right? You mentioned kids, job changes, all of that. And I think like it's always open, right? There's never like this, well, you can't come back, or, and I think for the most part, everybody understands that life changes, but I think you've done a good job of still staying connected, trying to come out whenever you can. And I guess talk me through, like, what is that feeling or sense of like, maybe guys feel like they can't come back, or it's like awkward to re-engage, or, I guess what for you, like, has enabled you to kind of stay connected, even though you can't come all the time every week, or what is that like for you?
Well, to be honest, I think some of it is the fellowship component. When we connect with the other guys during a beatdown and you come regularly to some workouts, you start to grow some good relationships, and relationships that I maybe didn't have outside of my work friendships and things like that. So what's been really good for me, and I'm grateful for some of the other guys, that here and there randomly I'll just get a text, hey, are you going to a beat down, or have you been lately? I'm queuing at this site tomorrow if you're interested. And that's always been something that's been, I'm a guy that always says yes. And I have a hard time saying no. So to be honest, I feel like some of those connections have really helped. And that might be a good recommendation. If you know of a guy that hasn't posted for a while, reach out to him and connect, because that's one of the things that makes F3 so great, is that it is a community, and you do connect with guys. So I think it's just guys taking ownership and saying, hey, Specimen, where you been, man? And that's always been a really good motivator for me. So outside of that, yeah, I just feel like it's on each individual to commit and say, I'm going to be there, and prioritize what's important, because most guys come for some part of the fitness, and every single day we have a choice to cave or fall back into that sad clown status and say, I'm going to fart sack, or you actually make it a point to go. So a few different variables involved, whether it's inviting somebody again and reaching back out to somebody that hasn't gone, or as an individual just committing to saying, I'm going to be at this workout and doing it.
Yeah. Well, and so you mentioned just the fellowship during the workout, which I think is key. Tell me about like some of the other relationships, or maybe like coffee. Is that something you've been able to participate in, or Q Source? I know we did a Q Source together the other day, but where else have you found that within the F3 group?
Well, that was funny, because that was the first day I think I've actually officially attended Q Source. Prior, I haven't read the Free to Lead book, and I know that's something that's well known throughout the F3 group. But Q Source, I think years ago when it first started, I always thought it was something like a source for the Q on the workout. Like this was going to be a way to show guys like how to lead the workout, and maybe talk about counting and whatever it may be, as far as like how to get a good beat down scheduled. So that was just my ignorance on what Q Source was. But I really enjoyed the discussion in the other day. So cafeteria, whenever I would be able to go, like now that I have all the little ones at home, I feel like I'm forcing my wife to sacrifice. Yeah. So if I go for an hour-long beat down, I would rather get home quickly. Yeah. But what happens is now you have all these guys that I don't feel like I know. And so, there's some sort of balance that you have to figure out as an individual, like what's acceptable for you and your family, and what do you have time for. And so unfortunately that's fallen off. But the other day I got to one of the earlier workouts, and because I got to an earlier workout, I had a little more time. So it's definitely something that I look forward to if I can get to it, just to reconnect with some of the guys, and because I feel like that's part of the glue that keeps it together. Because it's one thing if you're just going to the workout, but when you start to connect with other guys and get to know them personally, then it's a lot more likely for you to return, and you're going to go through life together. So that's what's cool about the fellowship component.
Yeah. And that, as we've planted more sites, we've been trying to stagger, the 5:30 and 5:15 start times. And for that exact reason, I think I'll often look at if it starts a little bit earlier, then I can stay for coffee and still get home at a reasonable time, whereas sometimes if you get done at 6:15 and then coffee drags over to 9, to 6:45 or so, then I think it's a little bit more difficult to get home and help with the morning routine, which nobody wants to be home alone with for that, especially with four little ones.
Yeah.
What as you're thinking about and the cool thing, and I think I would love to share. So the cool thing for me is like I knew you when I first started. You were already working out, and then as you've come in and out, I've been able to connect. And I remember when so last fall, my daughter was born, and I was kind of like struggling with that, like, oh, this baby's taking away some freedom. But I ran into you, and you just shared with me like, but how lucky are we that we get to have kids, right? And then in my COT on Tuesday, I was sharing the same thing, and you happened to show up, and it was your birthday. So really cool. For me, that's not a coincidence, right? It's kind of a God moment. But tell me about your faith. What's been your faith journey? Because I know you are familiar with Scripture, and you have a faith from what I know.
Yeah. Well, my story is unique, and I feel like that's what's cool about F3 is the faith component. While I feel like it's vague, I feel like ultimately F3 is what the church was supposed to look like, and because of religion and some rules that have been created, I feel like some of that has been lost with the church. And I feel like the church has done a poor job of following kind of Jesus's key commandments of loving the Lord your God and loving your neighbor as yourself. And what I love about F3 is I feel like it fits that so well that there's no judgment, regardless of the fitness of a PAX member or a new guy in F and G. There's no judgment on their color, their race, their religion, their anything. And I feel like that is ultimately what my Christian beliefs are all about. And so I tell that to people all the time, like the church is supposed to be like F3. We're supposed to be inviting people in and not caring about their decisions they make, because we are not to judge. So, and all of that kind of stems, I brought up, each person is unique and individual. And I feel like God gives us each different perspectives and stories to help sharpen us down the road. So I'm grateful for our time together, because you've sharpened me probably a lot more than I have you. But that one discussion, that's all it takes to help somebody on in their journey. And I remember a sermon a long time ago that we're not called to baptize anybody. We're just called to help them on, from maybe a spectrum of unbelief of anything, help them along that. So how are you being like a positive influence? And I guess, not to continue and belabor the point of faith, but my faith stems from an upbringing in the Catholic Church. And it was more of like checking a box to go to church. And I went to college and I didn't go to church because it was, again, checking a box for me. And I didn't have an active faith. I believed in God and I prayed, but I would say there's a major difference between a belief and a faith. So a belief is you believe it, but I feel like faith and an active relationship with God is completely different. So I was about to graduate college, and my grandmother was actually murdered in the Von Mar shooting.
Wow.
And so that was kind of an insane, tragic life event that flips you completely on end. And I guess prior to that Von Mar shooting, I feel like my family would have said family is number one. And our faith, because it was more of checking a box, our faith was maybe a second or a third priority. And I feel like when you lose a family member like that, it kind of brings things into perspective as far as like, okay, wait a minute, my family can die. Like that was my first impactful loss of a family member. And to have it be done in a tragic way was like, okay, my family can die. There were 1,000 people at my grandmother's funeral. And so I really saw like, what is a legacy? What does it mean to have people miss you when you're gone? And about 7 or 8 months after that, my other grandmother essentially smoked herself to death and was in hospice care, but we were able to say goodbye. And through that whole process, I kind of found my faith, and I said, you know what, this back burner belief that I have needs to become an active thing, because I could die tomorrow. And that's when I really found God. I started reading the Bible and started to know scripture. I think before I would have thought of myself as like a Bible thumper. And now that I've read the Bible multiple times, and I'm actually in a year study again, I try to do it yearly now. Now that I see the whole picture, faith for me is what makes the hard days positive, because I know that whatever struggles I'm going through, God works for our good. So the faith component for me is something that I'm passionate about. And it's just something that without my faith, I wouldn't be where I am, and I'm grateful for the struggles that I've been through, and I'm excited to see what God has for me, down the road.
Yeah, man, I never had heard you tell that story about your grandmother. I mean, to lose somebody in a tragic way like that. I mean, how eye-opening, right? To be like, whoa, this is literally in, a split second. And it could be us, right? Or, anybody else close to us. So, man,
And I think that, I'm sorry, but one of the things I was just going to say is I feel like so often we don't see God in the everyday.
no,
And after that shooting happened, a lot can come through your head, like, where is God? Why would this have happened?
no,
But when we understand that we each have free will, it just really got me to, I guess, see that we each have an individual decision to make on whether or not we want to pursue God and actively look for him. And I think if we look for him, some of those coincidences, like me waking up early and going to that workout, no longer become a coincidence and more become like there's God working in my life. And I think so often we close that door, or we say, I believe in God, but I'm not going to read scripture because it's too challenging. And so I think we just have to break it up and make it work for you, and try to study it. And I think the more you seek, you will find.
yeah. Well, and some would even say, there's a sort of a spiritual warfare going on where there are maybe some evil forces trying to prevent us from reading the scripture, right? I mean, and I think just knowing that we do have to make a choice, like you said, it's got to be an active faith for us to get in and study and learn and make an effort. And I love that you shared that. I think so many guys identify with the checkbox mentality, and as they were raised. And but then there's kind of it's like, how do you get back into that, like, discovery of your faith? It sounds like for you, you started reading, trying to find out for yourself. Is that kind of what you did?
Yeah, I actually, so I found a church that was a better fit for me and for my beliefs. And I feel like once I found a church, some of it actually, I was, the Catholic Church was very traditional. And so I actually found more of a non-traditional, non-denominational was a better fit for me. And then I started studying scripture, the music and worship. I didn't understand what worship could be like. And so that was a key thing for me. And actually, I since that time, there have been so many moments where I've seen God work so clearly. I got baptized one day on the spot. And that was strange because I was like baptized as a baby. So why would I need to be baptized again? But I made a personal commitment to follow God. And Heidi was not my wife at the time, but she broke down in tears when she heard my story. She's not a big crier. And then all these events led together that put us together. And we went to Africa together. We served for a few weeks on a short-term mission trip. And I fell in love with her. And on our first date, I was really bold. And I said, I don't know why I'm asking you this, but do you date to marry? And, this was a really challenging question, but I didn't want to mess around. I was serious, and I wanted to forego all that. So anyway, long story short, God showed up in all of those different ways. And I think my faith has continued as I continue to see him, and I continue to understand that, look, if I die tomorrow, it's okay. I've just got to do everything I can today to make the best impact, and and leave the world in a hopefully better place than what I found it. And that's what's so great about F3. And then I think about, like, sad clown. What is a sad clown? What is sin? And I feel like they're the same. Every single day we have an opportunity to cave and be a sad clown. And whether that's me going home and having a bourbon when I know I shouldn't, or getting to a workout, or sleeping in. I think some of those decisions, a lot of people say, where is God? But I think internally, when you have the Holy Spirit guiding you, you have the option to either respond and take charge and move forward with the way that God is prompting you, or falling back. And that's no different than sin to me. So it's kind of crazy how it all comes together when you look at that.
Yeah, I think what's really cool too is that Dread and OBT, as they started F3, right? I mean, sad cloud syndrome, just like addiction and so many other things, it's a spiritual disorder, or kind of thing that guys suffer from. This idea that we have to kind of falsely portray that we are, somebody that we're not, or, all of those elements are very, very similar, and definitely spiritual in nature. So I love that connection that you made there. Curious your thoughts on, because the other thing I see, and so in F3, right, the faith component sometimes shows up in a Q source discussion or a COT, or just the way we pray at the end, but also shows up in kind of how we serve the community. And, I think, curious your thoughts on that. Have you had a chance to engage in some of those community kind of service events, or any of the third F stuff from that angle?
I haven't done any of the service events, so that's something that's a guilty admission on my part. But one of the things I love that I see about like the faith component is, I think, just getting together and having guys acknowledge a higher power on a regular basis will open doors for those that maybe aren't as far on their spiritual journey. So I guess my encouragement to others would be like, it's no different the way that I see another PAX member, that I'm not judgmental on their faith, their religion, what church they go to, their body type, anything like that. And I feel like there's no better group than F3 to ask questions.
Yeah.
Like if somebody is looking for something and maybe you're not as comfortable praying, or you don't pray, but if you have a desire, ask one of the PAX members, ask one of the guys that you're comfortable with. And that's, I guess, the thing that I think is cool about F3 is that it always ends the same, and it always ends on that note, so that everybody that is queuing is bringing the heat, so to speak. They're bringing a good discussion point, and they're helping to sharpen, one another. And that's what I love about the COT, is that I'm going to get a piece of information. And I've even heard some guys say that is their church.
Yeah.
And I think that's perfectly fine. And it's awesome that, because I feel the same way when I leave. I'm motivated, I'm inspired to, do more, to get better. And that's just a cool aspect. But as far as any of the outside events, unfortunately, I haven't really taken part. So that's a good piece of encouragement.
Yeah, and it's tough with kids, right? I mean, I think that's where, I find myself in that same boat, right? Trying to get, just encouraging my family to get involved and do some of that stuff together. And, I think as you're in different stages of life, right? I mean, I think it's, again, it's one of those things where there's opportunities available, there's events you can participate in, but prioritizing the family is still the main thing. So, the other thing, and you mentioned, queuing a workout or getting to lead a workout. I know you've queued several times in the past. We probably could get you back on the queue schedule though, sometime soon. But talk to me, as we're trying to reinvigorate male community leadership, talk to me about your thoughts on, leadership, and maybe how we develop leaders, or anything we could be doing differently there.
Well, I think if you commit to queuing a workout, it's incredibly simple, and you're allowed to queue freely. And I've always enjoyed it. As of late, I have the time to set up a workout, but I put a lot of pressure on myself. That like, there are other guys that are coming more regularly. And but at any rate, I feel like if you feel like you want to, you should let others know that you're interested, because as far as invigorating like a leadership, there's a lot that takes place in as far as like planning goes. And when you actually queue a workout, it's a form of building leadership, and you've got to be comfortable, you've got to be confident, and there's a right and a wrong way to do it, and you've got to put it together. And I feel like it's a really good place to get some of that experience. And I'll never forget that when I first started F3, I had interviews, and I'm the kind of guy that will the guy that I see running down the street. And I'll say, hey, I see you running often, if you're interested. So at any rate, I was interviewing with this company, and I let them know that I was part of this and that I was working out. Hey, you're a man, you know, and if you want to come, I'm leading on Saturday. And sure enough, near the end of this interview process, this guy from this company that I was interviewing with comes to the workout. And it was kind of their way of like vetting me, and Stretch is his name. I don't know if you've met Stretch.
Yeah.
He's been pretty busy as of late, but he no longer works at my company. At any rate, it was so funny because I feel like that him coming to my queue may have been their like last step to like check me out and check a box to see, is this guy capable? Can he do it? And I feel like that just goes to speak to like the fact that if you line up a workout, you do it well, you execute, there's no doubt that is training you for like future tasks and leading and putting together a COT. Those all factor in. So that's kind of a cool, crazy story about, and I'm sure other guys have gotten jobs through F3. So, but it was just kind of funny for me that that's part of my personal story too.
That's awesome. And Stretch, he was posting down at the pit a lot, but I think he and his wife maybe started their own company, right? Or they're doing something with baseball, something or other.
Youth athletics. Yep.
Yeah. Youth athletics. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That is really funny. And how cool that you mentioned it to him in your interview. I love that. That's really funny.
Well, and what's interesting is my regional manager is out of Minneapolis, so I've encouraged him to go check it out in Minneapolis. And through my work travels, I've actually gone to workouts in Kalamazoo and Nashville, and that's one of the other cool things that I love about F3 is that if you go to another city, you can see how they do it. And several years ago, it was funny. It was like I went to another city where it was kind of raw and in the early stages. And you quickly see like who had it figured out, and I wouldn't knock them because we were in those stages early on. But it's really cool to see where we're at now and how well the guys, through your leadership, wait time, and the other guys that are leading. I guess that's a big thank you and kudos to everybody that's ever queued, and because everybody's a part of it, and to all the leaders, at the different spots, it does make an impact. And kudos, just major shout out to wait time, because you think of all the guys that have been impacted, and when I think about a legacy, my grandmother had 1,000 people at her funeral. And what are we up to at the PAX number? I mean, you think of all the guys that has impacted, and that's just in F3. So wait time, major shout out to you, man, because the ripple that you're creating and your legacy is connected to every guy in F3 Omaha. So shout out and thank you.
Yeah, I think we're getting close to 1,700 guys that have posted at least once, but yeah, it's crazy to think about the ripple effect there for sure. What as far as leadership goes, I'm curious too. I mean, have you ever considered leading a site, or have we ever if we ever approached you there, or what's been your kind of approach to that conversation?
No, for one, I think in the last few years I haven't been out enough. Two, being a fully commissioned sales rep, there are many days and mornings that I'm on the road very early, and my schedule isn't known until the week before. So I now know my schedule for the next week. So that variability based on my deliveries and things like that make it very hard for me to have any sort of structure. And that's why I love the flexibility of, just the different locations and how it's grown so much. Because regardless of where you live in Omaha, you should be able to find something that works. Yeah. And for me, that might mean, okay, if I wake up early, I might drive a little further and get to a beat down that's a little earlier, maybe have coffee afterwards. So I have interest, but as far as like the time and the commitment, I don't know that I could commit to a point there I would feel comfortable with giving it my full go. Prior to my current role, I was in a 40-hour-a-week job, and now I'm like 50, 60, and if I don't get an order, I don't get paid. So it's kind of hard to find the balance. Sure.
Well, that's good self-awareness, right? I think that's, the options there if the job changes. And, I think, Yeah, I think that's great. Good self-awareness and good, everybody wants to commit, right? If they're going to take on a role. So I think just knowing what you can and can't commit to, because your territory is all Midwest or Nebraska, or so sometimes you're getting up at, early in the morning to drive out to wherever you got to go, right? If I understand that correctly.
Yep, all of Nebraska and Western Iowa. So a lot of times I'll be on the road all day, then I'll get home, I'll be a dad for a few hours before the kids go to bed. And then once the kids go to bed, I kind of start a second shift a lot of times. And I'm grateful for the role. It's very rewarding. But it's just a downside that finding time to work out is a little bit harder. So
Yeah, for sure. What curious your thoughts that you've been involved in F3 from the start. You've seen it kind of grow, and some of the culture change or shift, or it's hard to maintain that culture when you grow so much. But from your perspective, what sort of advice would you give, maybe the packs as guys are coming back, after they've been away for a while, or maybe an F&G is showing up? What sort of advice would you give guys that are listening?
I feel like one of the things I loved about the early stages of F3 here was that tight-knit community that you got from knowing everybody every single week. The group was never too big. And then as we split, I think one of the things that might be helpful for the packs would be to maybe commit to a location and go regularly, so that you'll be seeing the same guys and you'll be able to grow relationships. Otherwise, like with me, with sporadic attendance, and it's so much fun for me to see guys that, when I was coming regularly, I was getting to know them well. And even at cafeteria the other day, I was walking out of the parking lot and I saw room service. And he was a buddy of mine, just somebody that I was at a lot of beat downs with. And it just, like, the joy that I get from any of the PAX members that I haven't seen for a while is so cool. And I think if you're just starting, just commit, continue to come, give it, 6 months, and see how you like it. And once you keep coming back, what you find is that it really truly is a committee or a community.
Yeah.
And guys are truly committed to improving and accelerating and getting better and looking out for one another. And at the same point, we're all the same. I think as you talk to other guys, I've gone through miscarriage and parenting struggles and job change. And as guys get comfortable sharing and being more transparent with things like addiction or struggles that we all face, other guys come out of the woodwork and are there to support you. So that's the type of community that you see with F3, and that's what makes it so fantastic. And the fact that it's all kind of held together by those 3 Fs is even more fantastic, and another reason why I feel like this is what the church should look like.
Yeah. And perfect example, right? At Q Source the other day, it was like we had guys, some guys in their 60s and all the way down to, early 30s talking about 2.0s, and you're like, so to hear somebody whose kids are grown giving guys advice about, hey, do this now, it's just like being able to work through all those things, in that community. And I like your advice about being consistent. I think that's one of the things I notice is we've maybe early on focused on we'll go around, go kind of explore all the different sites, and there's a time and a place for that too. But I do think if you're always moving around and never consistent, then you kind of end up in this nomad space where you don't really have a community or those close relationships, right? So it takes a couple times, right, with the same group of guys at the same spot. So I love that. What about one of the questions we kind of like to ask for fun? So curious your thoughts here, but kind of your most favorite and least favorite exercise. What would make that list for you?
Most favorite would easily be the clock merkin. Back in the day when I would queue at Boys Town, I would always want to run over to the steps and get clock merkins hammered out. I like running, so I always enjoyed running. And then I always think it's laughable and super funny when you get a bunch of dudes doing monkey humpers or pickle pushers. So those are all some of my favorites. The least favorite would probably quite easily be the burpee. And outside of that, I think sometimes you just do. I'm fine with 5 burpees. Anything more than that is asking a lot.
Yeah. What's funny is some guys probably haven't done a clockworking. So we definitely need to get you on the Q schedule. That's what I think.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll fill it with clock merkins, because I just like how unique that is when you have to find us, and that's part of the beauty of being the Q is you can find different terrain or different areas that you can check out and highlight, and that's what makes it fun to Q.
Yeah, absolutely. What about for you, as we see you out there, next time we see you, or just as we're going through our daily routine and praying, anything we could be praying for you about, or, when we see you giving you encouragement on?
I think just what you said, kind of the faith aspect of I always growing up believed in heaven and believed in God. But I struggled believing that the devil or hell was real. And the more that I go through life, I see that there are, times where it's like, man, I just feel this heavy weight. I feel like this is like something out of my control is just really negative. And I feel like the more that I believe in God, the more that I have to believe the devil is real. So I guess the personal attacks that we can have, I would just encourage guys to think about where they're at on their faith journey, and if they want to learn more. And as far as working out goes, it's just like what you seek, you will find. Right. And so if you're committed to this group for a workout, commit to going to the workout. Don't fart sack, try to get there. And if you feel a nudge to reach out to another PAX member, do it. Don't cave, because sometimes I feel like that's when maybe the Holy Spirit or God are moving us to make a connection, and we sometimes take the easy road and say, I'm not going to bother them, they're probably busy, whatever. I feel like anytime you feel that sense of I should do this, go for it, and you might be surprised at what God has for you. So I guess for me, just the encouragement when you see me out there, and the prayer would just be the balance piece. Making sure that as a dad and that concentrica, that I'm putting God first, my wife second, my 2.0s, shortly right after that. And when you make the most important other things are easy to say no to. And I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at saying no to things, and that's helpful for that balance piece. So just balance. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, I love that. And I think you're spot on. I think we all need, because it's a daily battle, at least, I know for me, to just like, keep that as the central focus of my day, right? And not let, because the world and our jobs they'll take everything we have, if we let them, so we got to really fight for our families and for that relationship with God. So I love that. What, anything else on your mind, or any other thoughts that you would want to share with guys that are listening?
No, just I appreciate the long timers that like yourself that have been coming and have stayed committed and have the schedules and flexibility to make it work. And I feel like you're making a fantastic impact. One of the things I thought of prior to jumping on the podcast was a guy by the name of Khakis.
Yeah.
Just a funny story to share about Khakis is I was in a basketball league through Mary Our Queen years ago, and this was probably about 9 years ago, maybe. Anyway, 8 or 9 years ago. Anyway, I was a captain at Mary Our Queen, and this was well before F3. But there was this guy on these other teams that whenever we played him, his defense was just so tenacious. He was just an animal, which is no surprise to any of the group. And if he's listening, I can't wait to see him next. But that guy was just an animal on defense. And when you see him on a beatdown, you know why. That's just who he is. So it's so funny when I go to a workout and I see him, because after I played him several years as a captain, you get to draft guys. And I swear he was on my team because I wanted him on my team for just his, I was not, I kind of strive to be a defensive guy like him.
Yeah.
And whenever you have a guy like that, you just don't want to play them. But when they're on your team, you want them.
Yeah.
And Khakis is that type of guy. So shout out to Khakis just for being the man that you are. And not necessarily I was never a scorer. I don't think you put a ton of points on the board for our team that year that I had you on our team. But like I said, that defense there's nobody with a stronger motor than Khakis. So thanks to Khakis, thanks to you, Plague. Pony, thanks, you're not on, but appreciate you guys for doing the podcast and just continuing to commit to the group and to everybody's leadership within F3.
Heck yeah, man. It's so much fun when you knew a guy before F3 and then you see him in the gloom and you're like, it's cool to make that connection. And I have a special place in my heart for Khaki, so I hope he's listening. If he does, then I'm going to make sure and share this one with him. But let's take us out in Namerama. Sound okay? I'll start this off here. Brandon Fleehardy, 36, The Plague.
Ryan Husk, 38, Specimen.
Specimen. Nice job. And recent birthday, right? Just you've only been 38 for 2 days, right?
Yep, absolutely. So 38, it started great, and if you're out there, Pax, I'm grateful for you and grateful for the beatdowns that I'm able to get to, and I can't wait to see you again in the gloom.
Heck yeah, brother. Hey, this was fun, man. I appreciate you taking time to chat and share your story. So love you, brother.
Thanks, brother. Take care.
Later.